Dr. Natalie Marks, and welcome back to another Quick Cup of Knowledge. Joining me today is Dr. Mary Gardner, co-founder of Lap of Love Veterinary Hospice, the largest network of veterinarians dedicated solely to end-of-life veterinary care. Thanks so much for joining us today, Mary.
Oh, I'm very excited, Natalie. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I want to dive right into this because it's such a novel concept that you and your co-founder, Dr. McVety, came up with. But can you share with us the inspiration for founding this company?
For sure. So Dani actually was doing emergency work, and she had done some hospice in the human world before vet school. And so when she was doing emergency work, she dealt with a lot of families that were dealing with end-of-life care. With emergency work, that's maybe 30% or something like that is the statistic. And she started to talk to families about some options that they can do to have the pet still be with them, but just for a few days if they wanted to, palliative care, if you will. And then she would go to the home to do euthanasia. And she was doing that for about a year and started to grow that aspect. There were other veterinarians around the country that were doing euthanasia in the home, and but not really having systems in place, software in place, marketing in place, and things like that. Just kind of doing it to their just the local community. So she reached out to me almost a year after she had started and said, I know you're thinking about leaving GP. What about end-of-life care? And it just really resonated with me because I am a second career veterinarian and lost my pet in my late 20s, and that's what made me actually go to vet school. And so I thought, if I can help a family make the experience a little bit better, then that's the reason why I left. And so left first career. So we started developing in our second location at Lap of Love in South Florida, and just learn the process of what it could, what a company could be nationwide as we start opening different locations. So that was 2009 is when it was started, so over 10 years now. And currently we have almost 135 veterinarians. And in 2019, we helped 58,000 families with their end-of-life care. So
Wow.
It's awesome.
It's really awesome. And I think it's so important to talk about because I think there are still colleagues out in the industry that maybe don't understand the importance, as you just described, of that moment or those moments that we give to those clients in their last days or hours with their pets. Oh, yeah. And what do you say to people that are a little reluctant to embrace that importance?
Right. I think that last appointment has the most everlasting memory with the family that they will ever have. So we must do our best in our profession to make it as good as possible. I know that's weird to people say good euthanasia, but that's what the term is, to make it feel, the family feels supported in their decision and not judged, and do what we can to make it a personalized experience for them. We're very clinical as doctors, and that's good, and having standards, but sometimes we have to step out of our comfort zone to make things a little bit more comfortable. And I was doing euthanasias in a clinic and at home when I was in general practice, because owners wanted to say goodbye at home, and if they didn't need to bring them into the clinic, could we offer that service? And a lot of times it was really hard. And so we're like, no, just bring them in. But that last appointment will be in their memory for years, decades to come. And we'll remember the day we first got them, and and some important appointments. But that's the one that will remain with them. And how can we make it better?
That's right. It's so impressionable, but it's also impressionable for the veterinary team, right?
Oh, yes.
The opposite way. And I think a lot of veterinarians and technicians and just hospital team members out there really have never gotten training, really, right, on what to say, what to do, what's right to do,
right.
What's wrong to do,
yeah.
right? And
yeah, right is
right. I mean,
very...
I didn't get any of that in school, and so for those that are wanting to really elevate this experience and
right.
to make that good lasting impression, but those good moments, what are a couple tips that you give to veterinarians that they could start implementing tomorrow?
This is a great question, and I think that now vet schools are starting to improve their end-of-life care education. A lot is communication, what to say. I could probably pack a room at a conference with the title, What to Say When You Don't Know What to Say During a Euthanasia Appointment, or when it all goes south and it's not the perfect experience. So I think it's really important for the clinic to realize what's the worst thing to an owner. So for us, if I asked you, what's the worst thing that could happen during a euthanasia? I can guarantee that most doctors will say they're going to vocalize, I can't find a vein, they may have a seizure. Those are all very medical things that could happen, but it's 3% of the time that they could happen. But the worst thing to an owner is actually having their pet taken away from them, to go into the back room, to have a catheter placed. And so veterinarians, technicians, clinics are very nervous about doing things in front of an owner because they want it to be perfect, and I get it. But at Lap of Love, we don't have a door to hide behind. We have to do everything in front of the owner, and we do it really well every single time. So clinics could absolutely do that. So I think first is to get comfortable with being in front of an owner. Because if I asked you, would you be okay for your pet to be taken out of your arms for the last 5 minutes? The answer is no. So if it's not okay for you, what can we do to make sure that we don't have our families go through that? Right. Because I want them to go back to the clinic. I want that you've had a continuity of care for so long. I want them back at their family doctor, if you will, right? So the other thing I think that's really important for clinics to learn and get comfortable with is if you can't find that vein. And the AVMA has approved so many different routes. And so I don't like to say plan B or alternate routes because that sounds like they're not good. It's kind of a backup plan. Yeah. But any of the routes that the AVMA approved is okay to do under sedation. And we always do really good sedation so that way if the vein gives us a hard time, that I am prepared, ready, confident, and know how to say, I'm going to go intrahepatic and even intracardiac if we have to. And so many clinics are nervous of that. But I understand, I get nervous too, but I know what I've got to do. And it's almost like when I speak at conferences, what if my laptop didn't work and my PowerPoint didn't go on? I got to know what I got to say. So being confident and prepared and ready, it'll be helpful when those time, when it does happen where it's not perfect medically.
Right. And what advice do you give to veterinarians who are feeling really emotionally drained from euthanasia? Because I'm sure people have asked you, you're dealing with end of life every day. Does that mentally impact you? Right?
My answer may be a little weird because people think, I can't imagine doing 40 to 60 euthanasias a month. Like you must go home and just cry every night. I leave some appointments crying, but not for a draining reason. I feel empathy and compassion for that family. I'm compassion filled that dog or that cat or that pig or that parrot, like we've helped so many, had a family that adored them, that loved them, and said a prayer over them, whether it's a Buddhist prayer, a Jewish prayer, a Catholic prayer, had flowers. They gave me flowers to bring to the crematory with their pet. Like I just feel so honored that I could be a part of that. And so I do cry, in the weird good way. Like this dog was loved, and thank goodness, because not every dog gets that kind of family. So, but I make sure that I can do a really good job, and I feel like I'm giving a good experience, and so I'm proud of that. I'm happy that I can do that, and so when I do even a paw impression in front of a client, which I know some veterinarians won't do, right? But to me, that's so important that after their pet is gone, to give that memento and to hand that to them, and their smile on their face, and the hug that I get. I feel very fulfilled. And so the thing that gets me the most sad is when I go to a home and it is time for that pet, but that pet has not been to their doctor in over a year. And I've done a study where it's over 30% that dogs and cats are not seen by their regular veterinarian over 18 months before they're euthanized. And that is the period of time where we could do so much good and help for them. So that's what makes me sad in my world. But the euthanasia, I know I can provide such a loving experience that I'm okay with it. I'm okay.
I love hearing that point of view because I don't think a lot of us really think of it that way. And it's a way to recharge and feel a part of that process and
100%.
having that honor. So thank you for sharing that.
Like people, when families will say, you're killing my pet, or I'm ending their life, but I'm ending the dying process. And that's hard to watch for families. It's really hard. I've done it myself, being a pet owner. And to be able to think of it in that terms is that I'm ending that process and making it good. It's helpful for me, and hopefully it is for others.
We could talk for hours on this, and I wish we could.
It's a cup of knowledge, though.
It is a cup.
It's a little teacup.
It is a cup. But I'd love for you, in just the moments we have left, to share one great line that a veterinarian, if they're in a room with a family and they're saying goodbye and they just don't know what to say, what is one thing that they can compassionately communicate to a client that feels good in the moment, right?
Okay.
And it doesn't maybe have to be one. I know
No, I
I've read
know.
articles of yours that there's lots of different things where you think you want to say this, but this might be a better way of saying it. But
Right. Just first off, know that I have inserted my foot in my mouth many a time. So I don't want anybody to feel like, oh my gosh, I said the wrong thing, because even I do it, right? I'm not perfect. But there's one thing that a lot of veterinarians, a word that a lot of veterinarians or team members say to a family, and it's to help. I know that it's to help the family be okay with saying goodbye, and it's that they're suffering. So he's suffering, and that's why we're doing this. But do you want your pet to suffer? No, none of us do. So by saying he's suffering, you've actually put guilt in their minds that I've let him get to this point. So instead, I always say he's struggling, and we're doing this so he doesn't suffer. And that just gives them a sense of relief that, they haven't waited too long, because nobody ever wants to think that, even if we think it, right? But that is also subjective, and but it's not necessary for them to have that guilt. So that's my one little tip.
I love it. I love it. This is such an important part of what we do every day. And I love your perspective and what you've brought to the veterinary community in terms of education and also just being a female entrepreneur. So,
well, thanks for, it's so nice to have, attention to something that I think is so important. And it is.
It absolutely is. So thank you for all you do.
Yes.
And thanks for joining us.
Anytime.